Hi, everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. I'm Marisa B. Today, my guest speaker is Paula James. She's a movement specialist. I want to make sure I said that right. Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for coming. She deals with Feldenkrais Method, which is going to be very interesting to hear about today. And she deals with yoga, and she has a number of different modalities that she incorporates in her exercise and movement work. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Paula?
Yes, thank you, Marisa. It's wonderful to be here with you. So I didn't start out with this at all. I was a literature major, comparative literature. So I was studying stories from all over, and I had a minor in French, and I was learning Mandarin Chinese. So I was interested in languages and stories and how people organize kind of who they are and what they know about the world through story. I was also a musician, and so I was interested in connecting people in a way of with music. It's very in the moment, right? And it's not so much about what kind of car do you have or what kind of degrees do you have, but what do you bring to the moment here? What are your skills, and how available are you to connect with the other musicians, with the audience? So I had that going for me. And when I graduated from college, I bought a one-way ticket to Taipei, Taiwan. And
wow.
I had one of my Chinese teachers' family was there. And so they met me at the airport and gave me a place to stay for a couple of weeks until I could kind of get my feet on the ground. So I found work teaching English. I was fresh out of college, and the Chinese have great respect for teachers. So I went from being a student to having a very nice, really wonderful experience with teaching other people how to speak my language, and speaking a lot of Mandarin on the streets and making friends. And I was playing music on street corners. So I just was having a wonderful, big adventure. And then I was on a bus going home from work one day, and it was kind of chilly and rainy. It was sort of wintertime evening. You know how everything gets, the sky gets dark early. So everything was lit by street lights. And I was waiting outside for the bus, and then I got on, and there's little trails of water on the windows of the bus. And I walked back, and I chose as a seat the first row behind the second door of the bus, because it was up nice and high and I could look out and see the city on my way home. But there was a metal railing in front of me and no vertical plate underneath that. And the bus driver stopped suddenly in response to something going on in traffic. And I shot off the seat and under the bar, thank God. And then down those wet, grimy steps. And
oh my gosh,
that was what set me off into 10 years of low back and neck pain. So I still, continued to move around and do things. I was in my 20s, so I had a reasonable amount of energy, but I hurt all the time. And chronic pain like that is something that other people can't see. It's not like a cast. It's not a wheelchair. And so people think that you look fine, and so you should be fine. So it was, I'm having an experience that's very different than what people perceive when they meet. And I also came to see pretty quickly that there's not much patience in the culture for things that are troublesome and stay that way over time. So
you can't see, right? You can't really see empirically all the time.
I stayed in Taiwan for a whole year, and I went to mainland China for a year, and I came back, and I still had, 8.5 years of hurting ahead of me. And so I didn't speak about it that much, because people get really tired of hearing about it. And, in our TV and movies, the writers, people will get into accidents or they'll get injured. And it's only interesting in the script as long as it's interesting to the script writers, which is usually a couple of scenes. And then they're fine, and you never hear about it again. But in real life, it can be a very different experience. And I found too that a lot of people, I mean, we're vulnerable creatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that, oh, I'm just one accident or illness away from also having trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to push it away and make it be your fault. Oh, well, it won't happen to me because I'm good, because I exercise, or because
Mm-hmm.
I whatever. But anything can happen to anyone. There's
Oh,
no,
of course. Of course.
there's
It
there's
is
no,
odd how that happens, though, right? I mean, it's just even the doctors often, and I mean, I have nothing against doctors, but even the doctors, especially when you're young and you're injured, they think you're supposed to bounce back and you shouldn't be complaining. Yes,
right.
it's very difficult.
Yes. So I made the rounds of health professionals. I saw doctors and chiropractors and massage therapists and
Mm-hmm.
PTs and acupuncture. Right? I did all the things, and I still hurt all the time. So it was when I learned how to move differently, how to work with my body differently, that I came out of pain. And that actually happened pretty quickly when it did. It was within a few months of a
Oh,
regular
wow.
yoga practice. I didn't, within a few months of a regular yoga practice, I didn't wake up in pain. I didn't have pain when I was just sitting around,
Mm-hmm.
which after 10 years of hurting was a big deal. But I still wasn't very functional for
Mm-hmm.
daily activities, right? So if I went for a long walk, then my left knee would complain. If I used my computer mouse for too long, my right shoulder would complain. So it was a relief not to be in pain all the time. But then it was through the Feldenkrais method and some of the other things that I studied that I kind of took care of those other little quirky patterns that were
Mm-hmm.
underneath. And now I don't have pain, and I can do things. I went for a 2.5 hour walk the other day, and I was
Oh,
just fine.
nice. Now,
So
can you explain about Feldenkrais method? I know that it was very popular in the 80s. I mean, I know it's been around prior to the 80s, but it was very, very popular in the 80s. And then it seemed not that it disappeared, but it wasn't talked about as much. And now there seems to be a resurgence of
mhm,
this method. And it is a movement method. So can
yes,
you tell me about it?
yes, with pleasure. So Moshe Feldenkrais was an Israeli man who had injured himself playing soccer as a young man, and the knee injury never fully healed. But when he was young, he moved around and was fine. He also studied judo. He was, I think, the first European to get a black belt in judo,
Oh,
and
wow.
he went to Paris to the Sorbonne to study and physics and engineering. And any lab that he went to, he would get all of his co-workers from the lab out on the judo mat moving around.
Mm.
His old knee injury resurfaced, especially during World War II. He was out with the Royal Navy, helping out on some of the ships, and that constant movement of the boat. He was living in I think a fourth floor walk up. So not having a functional knee was
Mm.
not very helpful in a building without elevators. So he had to figure this out. He went to the doctors, and they said, well, we'll do surgery, and there's a 50% chance you'll be fine, and a 50% chance you'll walk with a cane for the rest of your life. And he said, well, 50-50 is like flipping a coin. You don't
Yeah.
know anything. And for someone who was, a high level judo expert, the prospect of walking with a cane for the rest of his life wasn't really what he was planning on. So his wife was a pediatrician, and he started studying how young children learn to move, and studying her anatomy books and really looking at what's going on and working with his own body and his own knee, so that even though he wasn't able to repair the tissues. One of my trainers who knew him said that he sat down next to Moshe one day, and Moshe took his hand, my trainer's hand, and put it on his knee, Moshe's knee. And he said you could move the patella, the kneecap, all around.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't stabilized by the ligaments. But he was able to organize the rest of his body so well that the force of standing up, walking, moving around went through the center of the joint where it was meant to. And so even though there was still technically a weakness in the tissues, he was able to organize his body and use it well so that he was able to move freely around in the world. And so, of course, then other people that he worked with noticed, oh, you're not limping anymore. What did you do? Could you help my brother or my wife? Or so he started helping other people, and then gradually realized that, oh, what he was doing could be taught to large groups of people at once in a class. He could talk them through movements. So with the Feldenkrais method, one of the ideas is that we get stuck in habits and we're doing the same things over and over again. And some of your habits are very good. And it's nice not to have to reinvent how to tie your shoes every day, right? You can get dressed and go out in the world. But some of your habits don't serve you very well. And if you continue practicing those, you can create little irritations and inefficiencies every day. And then you keep repeating and compounding those. So instead, the Feldenkrais method is interested in really the cultivation of free will. Well, how many choices do you have? Could you do even little everyday things a little differently? Moshe said that you should have 3 options for to be in the realm of human choice. He said 2 is a dilemma, like to be or not to be. So you should have 3 ways that you can get up from a chair or walk across a room, at least 3. You could come up with, 5 or 10. But you want to have options, and every movement should be reversible. You could start doing something and come back and do something different, so that you're not just sort of throwing yourself forward and falling through your life, but you're at choice every moment. So there's a great benefit to physical comfort and relieving pain and tension patterns like I had. There's also a wonderful cultivation of free will and human dignity. And one of Moshe's comments was, I'm after flexible minds, not flexible bodies.
Well, that's valid, isn't it?
Right.
And your mind does have to be flexible before you can really do anything else, right?
Well, and one of the things that's wonderful too is if you interact with somebody who's a little bit fixed in their ideas and you try to get them to consider things from a different point of view, you'll often meet with resistance. Oh, no, they're really invested in that. But if you give them a slightly different way to move and just say, well, how is your breathing now? Well, they're going to notice if they're breathing more or less easily. What about tension? Or is it less effort for you to stand up this way? And so you get them into a place of, okay, it's not your habit, but what do you think? Is it working? And so it gives them another way to explore kind of how they show up in the world, and what habits do they really want to stay invested in?
Right, implement different tools, different techniques.
Right. And what's wonderful for me as a teacher is in the kinds of classes that I teach, and with some of the Feldenkrais movements in particular, you're asking people to do things that are outside their habits. So that means they can get into confusion and frustration pretty quickly, right? Like, who are you when you're not just running on autopilot? Who are you when I ask you to do something you've never done before, or do something you usually do in a different way? So some of the social masks come down pretty quickly, right? Like, well, okay, who are you now? And that's fun to get to meet people in a moment, sort of in the way that I used to when I was playing music. Well, okay, but who are you now in this moment? What do you bring to this situation? Not what have you done before, but right now, what have you got? And what can we do together?
And now you not only use yoga and the Feldenkrais method, but you have a number of modalities that you incorporate in your movement expertise. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very fortunate. I taught for I taught for several years at a yoga studio. And then from 2006 until 2020, I taught at a recreation department. And so I had this marvelous playground of being able to be free from, in a studio, usually you need to represent the lineage of that yoga studio. So here I could do just about anything. And I went to a lot of trainings. I was interested in things that interested me and also that would be helpful to, I had about 100 students I was seeing each week. So one training that I went to is called Integrative Positional Therapy. And one of the key ideas there is if you have a muscle that's tight, you might think that you should stretch it. But in fact, stretching a tight muscle makes it tighter. If you bring the end points of the muscle closer to each other, the muscle slackens. And if you hold a muscle slack for 60 seconds, it's like you press the reset button on the spindle cells in the muscle and it's ready for a new idea. So, for example, a lot of people are hunched over their computers and then they get short in the front. I have a literature background, right? So I think in terms of characters and motivation, these pectoralis muscles might have concluded it's their job to keep the shoulder close to the sternum. Now you go in and try to stretch them right away. You're asking them to fail in their perceived mission. So instead, you can use your other arm to pull that arm in towards the middle and you slacken, you shorten up these muscles. You hold that for a minute. And what happens is the muscles here perceive, oh, mission accomplished. And I'm not in this alone. I have help. And when that happens, they take a break. And then when those muscles have taken a break, now you can ask them to stretch and you don't get into a fight. You get mission accomplished. Now let's have a new idea. So I frequently do several rounds of slackening several big muscle groups before starting yoga poses with my students. And they're just that much more prepared and ready to, get up out of the chair or the car seat that they've been in all day and really be available for the poses. So that's one that's had a big impression on me. Another one is called spatial dynamics, which is really looking at the gestures that you're making in the world around you. So the idea is that the muscles follow your intention of how you'd like to move. And instead of putting the focus always within the skin, you could put the attention on the quality of the movement in the space around you. And then you give the muscles a different cue to follow. And that has been really, when I give those sort of cues to the yoga students, they relaxed faces in these just nice, relaxed, expansive poses. So it puts them a little more in a deliberate, thoughtful relationship with the world around them instead of just being stuck within their own head or their own skin.
Now, I've talked to a lot of people about this. Of course, we can't, the world has changed and we can't not say that there was a pandemic because there was, and we were all affected in one way or another. Now, I know that yoga classes are done online. I personally would go to yoga classes before the pandemic, and I know that they had Zoom meetings at the location I had gone to, if people wanted to do that. And of course, I would practice yoga at home myself anyway. So I continued with that. But how has that affected you? I mean, you have yoga classes. How, for example, we have an aging population. There are many people that are in pain. Of course, there are young people in pain, but there are middle-aged people that are in pain every day. And a lot of times they don't want to opt for medication because that takes you down a whole other route. So how now are you doing it with clients? For example, say I wanted to be a client. I know you were on the East Coast, but we're not near each other. How is that all working for you?
Really well. Some of my yoga students have they had taken class in the in-person for years, and now they're taking from home. And some of them say they actually prefer taking it home because when they were in the same classroom, they couldn't help but notice what other people were doing and sort of having a little competition within themselves. Well, she can do that. How come I can't? And now when they're doing class from home, they don't see anyone else. And they're just a little more restful in their own experience. And then it just depends. If they position the camera so that I can see them in the poses, I can give them a lot of feedback. And some aren't very interested in that. I like it when people leave their microphones on so that they can talk back and forth, or if someone says something funny, we all hear each other laugh. And so then it feels communal, right? We're having a shared experience. What I also find as far as demonstrating things is that with the camera and the screen, I'm able to really focus people's attention. Whereas if I'm like, I have a skeleton that I use for demonstrations. And if I hold this up on the screen and say this joint here, I can be pretty sure you're looking at that. If I do that and we're in a whole room, you might be looking at my hair or out the window or what your neighbor's wearing. You know, your attention could be on a lot of different things. It's also been very helpful to show pictures or images and be able to put those up on the screen, and we can all look at them together, and they're very clear and easy to see. So there are some things that can't be replaced about being in person. And there are some things that are really easy and clear. What I find too about being online, and what I find with the workshops that I'm teaching, is that some people are signing up for those and paying and not intending even to come to the live online workshop because they really prefer to watch the recording and just stop it every 10 or 15 minutes. So they can take in a little bit and take a break and then come back for a little bit more. And that just works better for them.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I personally would love to do the movement classes because I myself have had an issue and prefer not to take medication. And I do use the yoga, but I was looking to introduce other things to further stretch or move or not stretch, if the case may be.
Right. Well, so one issue I have with medication is most of it doesn't resolve the root of the problem. What the medication does is most of it affects how your brain perceives the problem, the pain. But that doesn't mean that it addresses the tissue that's irritated or that it addresses the movement pattern that's creating the irritation. And so you have the side effects that you get with medication, because they all have side effects, and you still haven't resolved the underlying problems. You'll alter your perception of the trouble for as long as you continue to take the drug. But then as soon as you come off of that, you haven't actually resolved or fixed anything. So you still have the trouble. It's just how is your brain perceiving it? So what's nice is that in 2-3 months, a lot of problems can be shifted tremendously. I have a 3-month program where I work with individuals, and we have a nice intake conversation where we look at, well, what's going on and what would they like to change. And then we meet every week for a short 20-minute session and give them one more good step. All of those are recorded, so they have all those resources to go back to. And sometimes, Marisa, sometimes changes are so quick, right? So aging population and trouble. One of my students online is 75 years old, and he said that he was starting to have trouble standing up from a chair. And so he was thinking that he should do some leg strengthening exercises. And I said, well, okay, maybe. But the thing is, when you're sitting, your hips and your head are behind your feet. And when you're standing, they're over your feet, right? And so the trouble is that a lot of people try to stand up this way, but you don't have any mechanical advantage here, right? Your head and your hips are still behind your feet. So I said, why don't you bring your head forward? And now it'll be easy to lift your hips up because your head is in front of your feet, your hips behind. Now you press your feet into the ground, you squeeze your glutes, extend your hips, and you can come up easily. And so in 2 to 3 minutes, he felt like standing up was much, much easier. And he might want to go do some leg strengthening exercises. But leg strengthening might or might not actually make standing up to be that much easier. There still is the question of, are you following a path of mechanical advantage as you get up, or are you doing something else? And so something practical like that just takes a few minutes to share. And if somebody deliberately implements that a few times, that becomes their new habit. And then they don't have trouble getting up from a chair anymore.
Yeah, I mean, these are really tools that you have to implement early on if you want to continue. I mean, that's how I look at it. If you want to continue to move effectively for, for what ails you, for your age, you have to have these tools. I mean, I think that's ingenious to figure out how to maybe relocate a bit of the weight or transfer a bit of the weight in order to get up from a chair so that you're not using tools or medication.
Right. So one of my clients says she thinks of working with me like a pension plan for the body, which I think is a lovely way to think.
That's great.
There's also, your body will change over time, right? So I had an accident. This client who thinks of my work as a pension plan for the body, since we did a round of things that gave her some nice changes, she's had a baby. And she said, wow, my post-baby body is very different than it was before. So now she's doing the 3-month program with me, and we're just looking at making sure that this slightly changed body is working, all the parts are working together harmoniously so that she can enjoy her days now and be set up to function well, because something has changed. And so the old habits aren't necessarily going to serve as well with the new body. And that can happen for anyone, just aging or changes in weight or something that happened from an accident or an illness, right? And so how do you now get acquainted with the needs for support that you have now and with the abilities that you have with this new, and if you only just continue implementing the old habits, they might not be serving you as well as they could. And so it's nice. I mean, we give upgrades on our software all the time, right? It might be nice to give a little upgrade to your habits of posture, alignment, how you carry yourself, how you move around in the world.
Yes. No, absolutely. And now I know you're very busy because I know you have a lot of clients, because this is something very important and many people are looking to get this kind of relief, really. I mean, let's face it, especially people that are in pain and they're really seriously looking for relief. Do you work in groups? Do you work one-on-one? I'm assuming you do both.
Both, yes. So I have weekly classes where I have 2 classes each week are yoga challenge. So we're doing some sun salutes and some up and down off the floor things. And then one class each week is an adaptive yoga class where we do everything sitting in chairs. And then another class each week is called gentle yoga, and it's got a lot more Feldenkrais influence. And so we usually get down on the floor and explore different connections. And that's a Thursday evening at 7:30 Eastern class. So for my people, they've already had a long day at work and they're ready to just get everything calmed down and go to bed.
Now, is this completely online that anybody can do anywhere?
Right. And you can find those through my website, artofmovingwell.com. There's a classes page. I'm also teaching workshops, and those are like 60 to 90 minutes in their focused topic: neck and shoulders, low back, hips, and knees. And so we go in and just give you some very practical tools and strategies you can use for those specific areas of the body, which tend to be common places that people have trouble. And then I have,
where can I get that information? Like, I know I'm definitely going to put in the comment section, in the notes section, on the program, I guess, what is it, your website?
Yes.
And I put all that in, but is everything on there, or your classes, your courses?
So artofmovingwell.com/workshops will get you to the schedule of workshops that are coming up. And then the 3-month individual program is called Your Pain-Free Life. And that there's a page for that on the website. And then usually I have a conversation with people before they sign up to make sure that it really is a good program for them, that they're a good match for working with me. And then we do an intake conversation and set some goals together. And then I do a tracker sheet. So every week that we meet, I put down what questions they had, what new material we covered, and that gets recorded. And there's a link to the recording in that, so that a year or 2 later, they'll be able to go back and say, wait a minute, she's told me something about how to sit more comfortably. I want to watch the sitting recording. And so that tailored specifically to them, answering their questions. All those recordings are theirs to keep and
great.
download if they want, and just access anytime, so they can use that as a resource for months and years to come.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, no, I definitely will put all that information so people will know where to contact you, as I'm sure that I'm going to get emails from people asking. So I always put everybody's information in to make sure. And then you mentioned something about that you had something that you might want to give to somebody too on the show.
So I have a free gift, which is called Pain-Free Workday. And that is a series of 5 short videos. Each one is 3 minutes or less. And each video gives one practical thing that you can implement at your workstation. Because I know everybody's busy. And the direction to carve more time out of your day to do exercises or stretches, or some people will do that, and others, especially if you're in pain, carving more time out of your day to do more stuff, it can be a challenge. So what I'm looking at is helping you use your body better while you're working at your computer, at your workstation, so that you're not generating tension. And then when the day is over, you might feel like going out for a walk because you don't have to recover from your workday. So the pain-free workday are things that you can do at your desk to set yourself up so that you are working well with your body throughout the day. And then maybe you feel good enough to do something fun. Well,
I want to thank you. That's very generous. I mean, you're talking about a very nice gift that you're giving the audience. I thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And so important because, right, so many of us are at desks all day long. And we don't really realize, especially with the working on the computer more nowadays, that seems to have had everybody hunch over even worse than before.
That was what I found. Was pre-pandemic, I only taught in person. And so my work days, I was up and down and walking around a room and looking out over the whole room at people. And then all of a sudden I was sitting on a stool in my kitchen on the computer all day, and it was awful. So I had to figure it out for me. And one of the things I figured out was that I am much better at a standing desk. And I figured out ways to make a standing desk work really well for me. And also with the slackening, there are things that I can do to be slackening the front, the back, the inside, outside of my hips while I'm on a Zoom call, while I'm typing emails, so that I can actually be improving how I feel and getting work done at the same time. And then I really am more likely to say, oh, you know what, on a lunch break, I'll go out for a walk. Yeah.
I mean, I personally bought a vest that pulls your shoulders back because I found that I was hunching over too much. And even though I do yoga, I know I need more. And so I did buy the vest, and I'm not at the computer all the time, but I'm there enough to cause issue.
One of the things I
look
really
at this. Nice.
was working on an unstable surface. So this is a little bit taller in the middle than everywhere else. And so when I stand on this, I'm shifting weight all day. And so all the little posture muscles have something to do. And also my balance system, my vestibular system has a mission, right? Don't let me fall over while
that's lovely.
Cock. And it just, everything stays a little more lively, and I stay more alert, more awake.
And what's that called?
This sometimes it's called a balance board, sometimes a wobble board. There are some that are rectangular and they only go back and forth. This kind is nice.
This is circular, yes.
The ankles can move in any direction. And because you have audience members that it might be a little adventurous for them to stand up on, you can sit down and put this under your feet on the floor and ankles without falling over, right? You can also put this on the seat of the chair and then sit down, and then you can shift, and so you get a little movement in your spine.
Oh wow, that's great. I have to definitely have to look for that. I'm assuming that you need a hard surface though, right? The surface underneath has to be hard. Where that has to sit, or does it matter?
So I'm in my kitchen right now. I'm on the kitchen floor, and I put a yoga mat underneath it so it doesn't slip around. I would say I would be cautious about putting it on a very soft cushion on a chair, because you might create a dent in the cushion because all the weight would be focused in one place.
Right. The same with a sofa. I don't think it's sturdy enough. It's going to sink in the cushion and
more like a
may
kitchen
defeat the purpose, right? May defeat the purpose because you need that
Right.
ability to move around.
Right.
That's a wonderful idea. Wonderful.
And it just keeps everything. I mean, the muscles that are still will tend to contract over time. And so even just shifting a little bit, wiggling around, right? We tell kids not to wiggle, but it's actually really good. So if you're wiggling a little bit throughout the workday, then your muscles aren't going to be turning to cement. And I really like, I also have a foam balance pad. So it's a couple of inches of dense foam. And then when I shift weight on that, all the bones in the feet move a little bit in relation to each other. And so again, it just keeps things a little more lively, a little more interesting. And it gives that autonomic nervous system something to do, right? I'm not just a disembodied head feeding ideas into the computer. My whole body has something interesting to do while I'm also working on whatever ideas.
It's true, because I guess we really forget to do other things.
Right.
When you're sitting using your brain, you really forget to do other things. Just sometimes even stretching your feet, a little bit out, further away from the desk and then bringing it back. I mean, nobody really even does that. I think then once you finally get up, especially as you get older, everything is so stiff when you get up.
That was one thing. Another training that I went to was the McGill method. So Stuart McGill's work. He's a professor emeritus now, but he was a professor at the University of Waterloo in Canada. And one thing that every different training I've gone to, everyone articulates something a little differently than I'd ever heard before. And Stuart McGill's people said that there's no one best sitting posture. In any sitting posture, some of your muscles will start to fatigue after 10 to 15 minutes. So what you really want is to have 3 or 4 good postures and then rotate among them. And I was like, well, that makes so much sense.
Right.
And that would be very much in harmony with Moshe Feldenkrais, right? Well, you should have at least 3 ways to sit. Okay. And you should be rotating among them. And then you won't have what you just described of you sit in one position for 2 or 3 hours, and then you get up and you're all creaky.
It's true. But I think, like, for example, that seat, I know that I'm going to have to purchase that because I have a tendency of trying to move around and stretch because I know that I get stiff if I sit too long in a certain position. And I don't have anything against doctors, but I really am not an advocate for medication because I just think that it masks the problem. It doesn't correct the problem. And sadly, a number of medications, you need more and more to do the same job that it initially did. And so I don't want to do that.
You're not resolving the problem. You're just influencing how you perceive the problem. And so the problem is still trying to get your attention so it can be resolved.
Yeah. And so I am always looking for ways to move, ways to stretch. So I think that the ball seat is just fabulous.
It's wonderful. Let me just give you one practical. So I give you one practical, right? Which is that if you pull the arm in, you can slacken those muscles in the front of the shoulder. So if you're hunched, that would be a nice way to help yourself with getting more upright. And I also want to show you this one. If you have your arms down at your sides and rotate so the palms of the hands face the wall behind you, I think you'll find that tends to bring the shoulders forward, right? Just that arm rotation. If you rotate the other way so that the palms of the hands face forward, then the shoulders tend to be more open, right? I can see it in you right now.
Yeah. And I have a very bad issue that I've had for many, many years with my right shoulder that I've gone to many, many places for, and there's never any result. So I'm always moving, stretching, trying to remove whatever it is that's occurred to it. But it really has a lot to do with what you're saying in the front. So I'm very interested in the idea of the slacking of the muscle, as you were talking about earlier, and when you're bringing in your arm and slacking the muscle, because it does make sense. We try to stretch it, and I think we're doing worse harm to it. It doesn't get a chance to rest.
Well, the other, right, coming to a music analogy, if you think about a string instrument, if some of the strings are too short and others are too long, the instrument's out of tune, nothing played on it will sound good. If you have some muscles too short and others too long in their teams around a joint, you're going to be out of tune. And then you go through your day and everything is going to be a little more effort than it needs to be. And you might not be as graceful or as well coordinated as you'd like to be. And so if you bring yourself into a little better tuning in relation to the length front and back, now the arm will feel lighter. It'll be easier to move around. It'll be easier to do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, and it's so true. When you have that one issue, that one problem, that one, what would we say, that one damage, that one accident, then you start to overcompensate in other areas. And now you have a host of issues all over your body.
Right.
Because
and that
without you knowing, right? Without you knowing, it's just you're all out of whack all of a sudden.
And there's connective tissue, right? Fascia that's a little bit like a bubble wrap all throughout. And I had this experience lately. I downloaded a new game on my phone, which is not even very interesting. And I got hooked into playing it. And so I was spending too long holding the phone and having my finger like a pointer. Okay, that put tension into my hands, but especially my right hand, which came up into my right shoulder and gave me a twisty experience in my left knee. And so I was walking around for several days and my left knee was feeling twisty. And I was thinking, wow, I wonder what happened to my left knee. Well, what happened to my left knee? It was my right hand. Yes. And as soon as I did a round of slackening activities for myself, for my neck, my shoulders, my arms, also the front and back, inside, outside of my hips, my knee, within 20 minutes, my knee was fine. Oh, wow. I didn't have a knee problem. I had a tension pattern that I'd put in by playing a game on my phone for too long.
Now, give me an example. Say I need to be a client of yours, because I really do. I really, really do. I need to be able to stretch and move everything on me. So how does it work? Like, how many days a week do I have to, first of all, meet with you? And then how many days a week do I have to do the exercises, the movement? What do you think is best? Does it depend on the client and what the problem is?
So the truthful answer to everything is it depends. But the other answer is, I'm interested in sharing things with you that mean that you don't necessarily have to carve out another 20, 30, 60 minutes out of your calendar. So this gesture with arms, right? If your hands the wall behind you and then you come up to type, you're already set up to do this. If you rotate palms forward, bend at the elbows, and then turn over from the elbows, your shoulders are back, your neck is free. So that might be one thing that we look at, right? In the 3-month program, we just meet for 20 minutes a week and give you 1-2 things that you can implement this week. And so one of them might be, well, when you're driving the car, instead of holding up here, hold the bottom of the steering wheel and have your palms up. When you're typing, start palms up, turn over from the elbows. And so that's not going to be extra time you need to carve out. That's just going to be every time you do an activity involving your hands, why don't you do it slightly differently? And so that would be your homework for 1 week is, well, could you notice? Because that's about it. It just sets a cascade in motion. If you internally rotate this upper arm bone, you invite the shoulder blade away from the spine, and you put a spin in this direction on the collarbone that pushes down on the sternum, collapsing you. If you externally rotate here, you invite the shoulder blade back closer to the spine, and you give a lift to the sternum by spinning the clavicle this way. That's already going to be huge, right? If you spend all day walking around and throughout the day, you externally rotate the upper arms a little bit, you're going to be more upright, your breathing will be better, your head will be more over your spine. You only have one thing to think about, but that one thing is like knocking over the first domino, and the cascade of dominoes after that are all automatically taking you in a positive direction. So the way that I'm really looking to work now is to reach into that toolkit that I have of different things and say, okay, this week, I want you to add this one thing into your routine, and let's see where that takes you. And another week, it might be slackening. And so then when you're watching a YouTube video, when you're reading something, could you be slackening those muscles and then see how they feel?
But it's like instructions we need that we never got. And now we absolutely need them and have to learn them and take them with us on a regular basis. Really? Yeah.
One of my workshop participants wrote an email to me after class, and she said, why don't they teach this in elementary school?
That we should learn it from then and take it with us. It's the truth. Then we wouldn't probably have these issues. But I do want to ask a question. What happens if there's a type of injury that has not gotten better? Something that's been not, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's not medical, but, you know, something's gotten knocked out of whack. It's not going to go back. Can that assist, or are you actually going to have to train the person to do other things? Can it assist? Is it going to assist in getting it back, or you really have to do other things for that?
So the correct answer is it depends. And even when the tissue is really permanently compromised, there are still, like, I had a student years ago who had very severe rheumatoid arthritis in many, many joints in her body, and she used a walker. And one of the things that was really tough for her was getting up from sitting to standing. And I showed her what I showed you with the skeleton a little while ago about standing up. And she said it even was a relief for her husband just to be able to see her get up from the sofa and not have to struggle. So no, I wasn't able to reverse the arthritis. Of course, right. Was throughout her body, but I could improve the quality of her life and bring some more ease and comfort to her by showing her ways that she could work with the body that she had, so that she could have a little more ease and a little less struggle, a little less pain.
And the other question I have is about adhesions. Not everybody creates adhesions, but there are individuals who've had surgeries throughout their life and adhesions occur. It was something recently, I actually was doing a course, and it was part of the Upledger Institute, and it was with the myofascial therapy and so forth. And it made so much sense to me when they said that people that have adhesions, they actually, they begin to pull, and they're pulling you in a direction, and you're almost like you're either folding forward, you're folding back, it's like a constriction. And so I'm wondering, because I assumed, and I could be incorrect, I assumed that through yoga movements, and then of course these other methods of movement, I thought that these could be stretched. I'm wondering, is that something that could be helped?
So I don't want to overrepresent what I do or what's possible, but I would say that there are some things for which hands-on work really is lovely, right? You've got two nervous systems there paying attention to the situation. I'm trained in hands-on work. It's wonderful to give it. It's wonderful to receive it. And sometimes there just are blind spots for yourself. And to have someone else not ask you to go find the dark forest in your own self, but to, you know, be there with their hands shining a light, making connections, helping things move, that can be tremendous. What I also know is there's a PT that used to work local to me, and now she's moved, and she did wonderful work with releasing restrictions in soft tissue. And I sent a number of my students to her, and she was very impressed that even though she could go around and find, she had a very nice technique, non-invasive for, well, does it hurt here? What about here? And then that would give her information on what needed to be released. She said, even though many of the people that I recommended to her had lots of sore points, they didn't report as much discomfort and struggle as she would expect for the number of sore spots that they had. And so even though the whole underlying structure was not completely, like their hair wasn't completely combed out, and yet they didn't have the amount of problems that she would expect with somebody that had that many little restrictions going on. So I don't want to represent that through an online session I can help you take care of everything. But
well, no, but nobody can, right? Not even a doctor can. That's not right. You know, we're human beings. We can't do that.
But there is a lot that can be done to help you be more comfortable with whatever situation you have, and can help you if you're seeing a chiropractor or an osteopath or someone who's doing other craniosacral or other connective tissue work, can help you maintain those adjustments over time. I've been seeing an osteopath locally. He came highly recommended by my Ayurvedic dentist, and boy, he gives wonderful adjustments. And I had some old quirky stuff, and I hadn't seen anyone for hands-on work, since before the pandemic. So I went in and he adjusted a few things. And when I went back for the next one, he checked me at the beginning and he said, yeah, springy and symmetrical, just like we like it. You must be doing something right. And so I was able to maintain the adjustment from the previous time because I was using myself in a more balanced way and giving a reset to my muscles throughout the week, so that I wasn't accumulating more and more difficulties. I was able to sustain the input.
Because of course, right, it's maintaining what's being worked on, and actually everything helping, right? Everything working in conjunction.
Right. And it's also, I think, really showing up and meeting the body that you have each day, right? So, and there's some of that from my music background. Well, what songs are we going to play today, right? As we wash dishes, as we walk the dog, as we make the bed. How do I work in a friendly, companionable way with my body today, instead of taking it for granted and resenting whenever it complains about needing a little attention?
So true. So true. I mean, we could talk about this forever and ever. I mean, really, because right, pains, issues, twinges, everybody has them. As we get older, we have a lot more. Sometimes we don't even know how it happened, but it happened.
And I just want to address, I think a lot of people because it's a cultural assumption, a lot of people think that you inevitably accumulate aches and pains and troubles as you get older. And I think you inevitably accumulate aches and pains and troubles when you live with bad habits for decades.
Yes.
And so the more that you keep working in a friendly way with your body, the more of those troubles become optional. And we do become a bit less resilient as we get older. And so then it just becomes more important to use your body well throughout the day and not expect that you'll recover when you're sleeping and bounce up out of bed the next day, right? You really want to be using yourself more skillfully throughout the day, so that you don't need to recover so much.
Well, that's why we need the lessons, because the aches and pains are coming from the fact that we really don't know what to do, and we don't know how to correct something or how to work around it. And so really, as your client has said, we really should all be learning this since elementary school on and coming with us, so we don't get to this point. It's true. And of course, some people do things that harm them more than others, and so they may have more aches and pains. But definitely, we need to educate ourselves and to have movement. I mean, we absolutely have to know how to move.
Well, and I do love the idea of people being active and doing things they enjoy. And I just want to also put out a caution that I also know a lot of people who have exercised their way into chronic pain. So make sure that if you are exercising, you're doing it with a little understanding of what you're doing and why, and whether or not your own body actually needs it. You don't want to stretch everything. If some muscles are too short and some are too long, you don't want to stretch the long muscles. They need shortening up. So it's not always just about getting stronger. Like my student who had trouble standing up from a chair, he just needed to shift his body mechanics. And once he did that, he didn't need more strength. So I think it's easy to think I need to stretch or I need to strengthen, but you might just need to get the whole team working together more harmoniously. And once that's in place, then things become easier. And it might be that working out in the gym for you is good. It might be playing Frisbee with your dog or going to a dance. I mean, there's so many ways that you could enjoy moving around in the world. And you don't have to sentence yourself to the treadmill or the weight machines if that's not joyful for you. And especially if it's just causing little bits of damage every day.
No, it's all about education, really. That's what it is. Really is. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today to speak to the audience. I know you're very busy. I know you have lots of clients, and you took the time to come and educate us today about all of this. It was wonderful. It was wonderful for me personally. Thank you. Again, I'm going to leave all the information in the notes so that everybody can get in touch with you. And again, thank you for that wonderfully generous gift that you're giving the audience. And I will definitely be in touch with you because I find this very interesting. And I find that I personally need to be educated on how to move and sit and stretch. So I definitely will be in touch. Again, thank you so much, Paula.
Thank you so much, Marisa. It's a wonderful program, a wonderful series that you offer here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Bye now.